All right. So, good morning, good evening, everyone. So I have to tell you, I have spoken to Dave only on via Facebook Messenger. Nothing. Let me actually hold on before I go. I forgot I got to mute everybody. Okay. Can you guys still hear me? Wave if you can. Yeah. Okay. Good. So yeah, someone posted in my group of a Zoom call that Dave did a few years back. And I have already seen every single, probably three principles, video, audio, books. I've already listened to everyone. I hadn't heard of Dave, so he piqued my curiosity. I don't know why I didn't hear about him from so long, but I figured, you know what, someone posted it just so I could make a comment and say it was a great video. I was going to kind of just humor her and say it was a really nice video. Thanks for posting. And 20 minutes in, I was blown away. I was literally blown away by what he knows, his articulation, his connection to nature and plants, and it was something that I hadn't heard. I'd heard it from people outside their principles, some TED Talks, but nothing in the way that he spoke about it, how he speaks about universal thought, this energy of thought, and it was just mind-blowing for me. So I immediately shot him an email, and we just started bantering like we knew each other. It was really, really neat. And that's when I said, "This is one of my guys. This is a guy I can hang with." And not only is he he's smart, he's down to earth, he's witty. I was like, "We got to get him on this group, man. This is going to be a fantastic time." So I wanted to give him the opportunity to share what he knows. And apparently he's a lot more popular than I thought. This is, the turnout for here is incredible. And shame on you, because when I get on these calls, half you guys don't show up. So how dare you guys do it for Dave? I'm going to get you back for that, man. But but I am excited. And without further ado, I'm going to leave it for him to speak, and so you guys get a glimpse of why I think he's so amazing. Sorry to put you on the spot, So with that being said, here is Mr. Dave, and I'm going to start with the first question. Dave, where are you? Here, let me unmute you. There you go.
Hello.
All right, there you are. Dave, how, just for my own sake, how did you come to this understanding? Where did this come for you?
I came across it. I'm 38 now, and I came across it when I was 33. My previous life, my life number one, was an awful lot of suffering, really. I think most people who kind of come across the principles have got a backstory, and I apologize as I speak about mine, but it was like, I was a very scared man. And because I was scared, I was a very egoic man. I had a lot of front. I was very aggressive. I was very hostile. At the age of 21, spent time in prison for violence. I failed my college course in ecology, something that I was really good at. I was very good at ecology, plants and animals, but I failed it because I preferred drugs and alcohol, and I suffered a lot with depression. And so within 6 months, I'd failed my college course, got this prison sentence for violence, and then I tried to go out into the world and find work. And needless to say, it was nigh on impossible. Nobody wanted to employ me. So I ended up starting my own tree surgery firm. I met a man and I became a tree surgeon, which is where a lot of my observations about the principles kind of came from. At the age of 32, I went through a really rough patch, had an affair in my marriage and split up, and I hit rock bottom. And I'd hit rock bottom a few times in my life, but this one was the last one as far as I was concerned. This was game over. I'd had enough. I was good with knots, I was good with ropes, and I was planning on necking myself. And it was just at that time I had been seeing therapists and counsellors and one therapist that had contacted 6 months previously, I'd only seen her once. Her name was Sue. She phoned me up and she said that she had a tree for me to look at. So I went round to a garden, walked into a garden, and she'd moved home, so I'd never seen this garden before. And as I walked in, I was struck by the fact that there was no tree in this garden. And I knocked on the door. One of my things that I really used to suffer from was anger. You can just see Jill now. Hiya, Jill. One of the things I used to suffer from was anger. And it was my default, instant anger, but like a serious fit of rage, and road rage, rage with my family, just serious outbursts. But this lady phoned me up and there's no tree in the garden. I went round and knocked on the door, and I'll be honest, I was totally pissed off about this fact that there was no tree in the garden. And she just said, come inside and have a cup of tea. The tree's over there. I said, it's not even in your garden. I said, it's in your neighbour's garden. She said, I know. She said, but if I told you why I had to get you here, you wouldn't have come. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, I've been told I need to teach you something. I said, and who's told you what? Who's been talking about me behind my back? And she said, the universe. And again, I can honestly say I was thoroughly pissed off at having my time wasted. But what had happened to Sue is she'd come across, on her birthday, somebody had posted her The Enlightened Gardener. And she doesn't know who did it. She just got this book from Amazon and she read it. And she was a hypnotherapist, CBT, NLP practitioner who woke up to the principles and then realized how simple it all is. So she started to teach me. And it took me 9 weeks. It took me 9 weeks before I realized beyond it's just a thought to how inexplainable it all is, but how beautiful and fantastically mind-blowing it is. So I don't know if you've got another question you want to ask or whether you want me to carry on talking.
No, I think you're going right to where I was going to go. You said it's beyond just thought, and I'm curious if you can keep going. This is beautiful.
The day, I call it waking up, because that's how it showed up in my life. It was like a real awakening from darkness and suffering. I lived, my world, my planet Earth was a world of hostility. I got aggression everywhere I went. I found aggression. People are aggressive, people are intimidating. And I was like my little Jack Russell, Rusty. I didn't back down. And then I wondered why my life was so shit. But I remember it was week 9, and Sue had been talking to me each week about the principles. And I remember her ringing me up one day and saying she had her ass-kicking shoes on. And she said, you've never done anything I've asked of you, Dave. You've never read any books. You've never looked at Sid on YouTube. You've not done anything. You've basically just taken from me. And I remember that hitting me like a ton of bricks. I was sat in my kitchen window. I was eating my breakfast and I was dressed in my tree surgery outfit. I was going to work at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I realized she was absolutely right. I had totally taken from Sue, and Sue, I'd never kind of given her the courtesy of doing, like, helping myself. So I did. That morning I thought, I'm not going to go to work. And I took a morning off work and I typed in Sid Banks into YouTube and I just listened to Sid. There's only a few little clips in there, but I just listened to him. And I remember there was something that he said that resonated. It changed my feeling state. There was something when I heard it, my feeling state changed and I couldn't put my finger on it. But I decided at that point I was just going to go for a walk. So I got Rusty and I jumped in my van and we drove up to a road in Cumbria, up a mountain in Cumbria called Potter Fell. And I remember just pulling over into a lay-by and looking out and getting out the car, and I was stood overlooking the town of Kendal, which is near where I live. And it was whilst I was just stood there looking that, of all things, it was a crow, a jackdaw, a blackbird, a small blackbird. It's got a grey head, and they've got these really pretty blue eyes, and they're fantastically intelligent. It flew past, and as it flew past, it turned its head and it glanced, and it looked at me. And I looked at it. And it carried on. It flew. It just flew off down the hill and went and did whatever it did. But it was in that moment that all of a sudden everything that Sid had said made sense. I was thinking thought was what I think. But in that moment, and this is me putting words to an insight that there were no words to. I've since put words to it. It took me a couple of weeks before I could articulate it, because in that moment I fell into this space of just utter vastness and nothing but everything. The only really way I can describe it. And it was a familiar place. It was something that I recognized. But it wasn't something that I lived in every day. And what it was that there wasn't an I and me and things. It was just total. I can't really put any more to it. But what kind of revealed itself later on was that what I'd kind of realized, or what kind of revealed itself to me, was the crow was conscious. I am conscious. The crow was utilizing the power of thought and creating its own reality. Same as I do. It is a conscious, dead now, I presume, conscious thinking being. And all of a sudden, it was like what Sid was talking about as this power of universal thought suddenly shattered everything I ever thought that I ever thought I was. And I remember coming out of that state into and just sitting there and crying, just in the most beautiful, peaceful love, and being so thankful, but at the same time scared, because it was totally alien to me. This kind of feeling state, in this kind of very human feeling state of love and compassion and understanding, it was very alien, and I loved it, but I was scared it was going to go. And I think from then it was like, as most people find, it's like it's an evolution, more and more insight. It's like people often think, oh, when I get a grasp of these principles, that's the goal. It's like, no, it's a beginning. It's a continuation. The continuation. And the freedom that I found in my life, I was very much trapped by my past. I was very much trapped by my ego of needing to be a hard man. But all this stuff had vanished, gone. And I hadn't done it. I had nothing to do with it. It wasn't anything that I did. I can't think myself to that place. I can't do it. I've tried numerous times to think myself there. I can't do it. This is where our personal thinking gets in the way. When we start thinking that there is something we need to think to achieve this, or we start using the power of thought and creating the idea that somehow we can think our way to that kind of space. For me, the realization of the power of thought behind what I think was total oneness. And it shattered everything that I thought was. Because now I sit here and I've kind of studied this now for 5 years, and I haven't got a clue what thought is, what consciousness is, why the universe creates beings that get lost. I have no idea. But I know it's magic. I know it's impersonal. It's unifyingly impersonal. I've stopped doing tree surgery. I stopped doing tree surgery when it hit me one day that consciousness implies awareness, and awareness implies experience. Now, when I've reduced trees and cut trees down, they've known fine well they've been cut. They're conscious and they think. They're conscious thinking beings that have an experiential reality, not like ours. Ours very much governed by our senses, and what we see is what we believe, and what we hear is what we believe. But they have very different sensory experience. But nonetheless, they are conscious living beings, and they are having a separate reality. And through observing them, just through observing their behavior, you can see they have ego, they have a sense of self. And you don't need to go any further than a woodland to observe this fact. It's like to go into a woodland and look up, just simply look up, and look up at the canopy. And you'll see, very, very rarely in my tree surgery, 17 years of tree surgery, did I ever cut a branch that was touching another tree. They are spatially aware. They don't grow into each other. They very rarely grow and touch. That sense of self is ego. It's the most natural thing in the world. Which I suppose which is why going to war with it is one of the most catastrophic, time-wasting, discomfort-causing thing that any human being can do, is go to war with who they think they are. And I spent an awful lot of time doing that. It's almost like this whole thing like a joke is coming to me. This whole thing is an illusion, a complete construction of the mind that we didn't create. Human beings did not create humanity. Human beings did not create consciousness, and human beings did not create thought. Human beings take credit for everything that they seem to do, all their achievements. But all these achievements and expressions and awesome things that we do and create, they're all a product of consciousness and thought, an expression of this universe. for me personally, when I woke up to it, I got to see the value of, or I got to see that this isn't behind the energetic construction of our physiology. You speak to any quantum physicist and you ask them about an atom, they will tell you it's nothing. The atomic structure of this cup is a vibration of energy, a vibration of ultimately nothing but potential. And this, everything that we physically see, touch, when we really boil it down, we go beyond what we think. We go beyond the superficial. You're always going to get back to the point that everything is created out of nothing. And this is totally backed up now by quantum physics. And it's the same thing for experience, because it is the same thing. Each of our experience of life is the same thing. It's this expression of energy, this expression of power, thought, what we call thought. The moment we call it thought, we think we know what it is. Universal thought, the universe. I've been writing a book lately, and I was trying to look up the definition of universe, and I couldn't find one. And what kind of just occurred to me is like uni being one, and verse is, it's like a rhythmic, it's a rhythmic chapter in a song. I think that really beautifully describes the universe. It's like one beautiful rhythmic chapter. One beautifully rhythmic verse, one song. Don't know if you've got any more questions.
I'm just kind of sitting with what you said, to be honest with you. I was very I was just becoming very self-reflective. So I'm gonna sit in the background. I have some hands that are raised if you're okay with that.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, okay, cool. Jesse, Lynn, go ahead and unmute yourself because I can't find you now.
Hello. Here I am.
Oh, there you are.
Hey, Dave. Can you hear me?
How are you doing, love?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Long time no see.
That's been lovely to see you.
Yeah, you too. Can you talk a little bit more about what you were just saying about the quantum physics of like a cup being nothing? It's not a direct question. It's just one that I've just been kind of reflecting on a lot lately. So when you touched on it, I was like, oh.
I'm not a quantum physicist.
I know.
But I am interested.
Yeah.
So what we were taught at school was a Newtonian atom. So it's like a nucleus in the middle, the protons and electrons spinning. And that paradigm, you could call it, was taught for, I don't know if they still teach it, I haven't got a clue. But since coming across the principles, I became really interested in what is going on, trying to find more answers. And one of the only, in fact, the only book I've ever read is by a man called Bruce Lipton. Some of you may be familiar with this man. He was a stem cell researcher. And he was a scientist, and he had this spiritually awakening moment when he realized that the nucleus of a cell was not the brain of the cell. And when they realized that, he realized that the cell was getting knowledge from what he called an external source. When he said external source, he meant something separate to the cell. The cell the DNA in the cell did not contain the information required for the cell to become what it needed to become. Whether it be flesh, whether it be bone, whether it be skin, whether it be heart, kidney, whatever, eye. And in his book, he speaks about the nature of the atomic structure of things. And there are experiments carried out in the 50s, if anybody's interested, or people perhaps have come across it, something called the double slit experiment. Fantastically interesting. But what he was saying about an atom is that if we could zoom in on an atom, zoom in and 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 zoom in, you'd realize you'd look straight through it and there's nothing there apart from a swirling ball of energy. Ultimately, an energetic state. And this energetic state is what is creating all things, all matter, all physical stuff we have all around us. You and I, and bricks, and what else? A bike outside, and a chimney in a church, clouds. And everything, so ultimately everything is energy. And this energetic vibration appears as solid structures to beings. I can't explain how, but this is what the science is pointing to. But when you look at that, you realize it takes thought. It takes knowledge. I've got a few, I always bring props. But behind the atomic structure of this is knowledge, the dandelion. It's a physical form. It's a conscious expression of life. And one of the things that really struck me was the complexity and depth of infinite knowledge that everything is and is built from, which is you and I, which is this, which is Holly. So to try and give you a sense of what I'm trying to point to, the knowledgeable energy behind structure and physical appearance and physical happenings. When I was a tree surgeon, I used to spend an awful lot of time getting these things out of my hand. It's thorns. And I remember one day, I mean, they've been the bane of my life. I've had them everywhere. But I remember one day I was pulling one out and I started to get these questions coming into my mind. I didn't create these questions, but I found them so helpful. they kind of opened me up to, they opened up another door into my awareness of life. More questions. It simply brought more questions. It simply showed that I didn't know anything. But I remember the first question that kind of came to me, it just said, why do plants have thorns? And it was dead simple. Knew the answer to that one. It was for protection, obviously. It's to protect the plant. Then the next question came. And it just said, but how does it work? And it was like, well, I feel it. I don't really want to cut the plant. I don't want to eat the plant. I don't want to bother the plant. I'm just going to leave the plant alone. It's very, very clever. Yeah, it's good. So it works because I don't want to go near it. He's like, okay. But how does that work? And I reflected on it for a while, and then it occurred to me, well, it obviously works because I, being an animal, have a nervous system. I have a nervous system. So when I get pricked, I feel it and it feels uncomfortable, and I take myself away from it, leave it alone. And then the next question which occurred was one that kind of really shook me. It just said, but how does a plant know about an animal nervous system? How does a plant know about an animal nervous system? These only work, they simply only work because of a nervous system. Without a nervous system, there is absolutely no use for a thorn. And I pondered that for 2 or 3 weeks before an answer occurred to me. And it was, Dave, you don't even know how to grow your nervous system. You didn't need to grow your nervous system. You never grew your nervous system. Your nervous system grew. Like the tree didn't need to know about thorns. It simply grew thorns. And then what occurred to me was going back to this oneness, this one state that everything is. It is all knowledge. It is knowledge about the nervous system. Likewise, it's knowledge about the thorn. It knows the thorn and it knows the nervous system, because the nervous system and the thorn fundamentally are one. They don't appear as one in physical structure. That looks very separate. I can drop it. But in the knowledge that is all around us, that is all things, there is not that separation beyond what we sense, before what we sense, however we want to describe it. There is just a unifying knowledge that unites all. And all beings are conscious states. Every single one of us on this screen. The pigeon that just flew past. The dandelion is a conscious state. The fact that trees produce seeds which are aerodynamic. They have awareness built into them of aerodynamics. Simple things. It's all around us. There's evidence for it all around us. And I get excited when I see it. It's like, I just get reminded that this whole life is one massive divine mystery. It's all an expression of a conscious state of this universe. It's not mine. It's not me. Yet paradoxically, I get to walk around on Earth and call myself Dave and do idiotic things and do awesome things and say stupid shit and then say great stuff. It's like, I get to live. But there's a fundamental difference between my living now and 5 years ago. I cannot comprehend or explain the shift that happened in consciousness for this being. I cannot explain it. No way, I cannot. I don't know why what happened to me happened, but I don't know. It just happened. I can't take any credit for it. I live my life now with far more understanding and love and excitement and joy. And again, it's not something that I'm trying to create in my life. It's just once I got to see past the illusion of life, to realize that this whole thing is an illusion. This whole thing that we take so seriously is a magic trick. An expression. It simply, in one moment, turned that hostile world that I lived in into a world of love. And I saw love everywhere instead of hostility. And it was so simple. It was simply realizing we're not what we think we are. Ever. Even the words that I'm kind of using now to describe all this stuff, that is not it. It's like it's never going to be. I often liken it to when we think we know what something is. Thought, consciousness. Oh, I know what thought is. I don't understand consciousness. Yeah, an inkling. I love mind because mind's spiritual. Thought isn't spiritual. I'm not interested in thought. I'm only interested in the spiritual. It's like, no, this whole thing is a spiritual happening. There's no separation. There's just one thing happening all the time. Just one thing happening. What I often liken it to walking out into the middle of a desert and take the power of thought. I know what thought is. I liken it to walking out into the middle of the desert with an infinite amount of grains of sand and bending down and picking up a grain of sand and going, oh, that grain of sand's the desert. I know what the desert is now. No, none of us know what the desert is. It's this power of thought is it's nothing that the moment we think we know what it is, we've conceptualized it. The moment we think we know what consciousness is, we've conceptualized it. The more I look at it, the more I don't know. Simply don't know. But I do know that this kind of conversation around this topic seems to it seems to do something with the ego. And the ego, from time to time, for people, some people, takes a back step. And all that's happened there is we've simply stopped believing our thinking. Or our thinking's got quiet. I've no understanding why some people hear and some people don't. No idea. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with anybody. And nobody should take that personally if they're struggling to kind of figure any of this principle stuff out. It's cool. It's a cool illusion. Is there any more questions?
Yeah, we have one from Fiona. I'm going to get her on. Fiona?
Hi, thanks, Amir. Hi, David. Great to see you. I'm just trying to go back to galleries here. I hate seeing myself in massive
I can see
on the
it.
screen. Yeah, hi. I love what you're saying, and I love the way that you're saying it, and I can see your awe and your enthusiasm and your love for nature, and yeah, I resonate with all of that. One of the things that I'd like to ask you about what you've said is, do you feel that it's consciousness that uses the energy that everything is and decides what it's going to be?
Everything is consciousness.
Absolutely. And consciousness uses energy to manifest things, you know, to make the form out of the formless.
Everything is an expression of consciousness. Because this consciousness is the energy behind life. All things. One of the Sydney Banks quotes is, we need to start seeing in the singular.
Yeah.
So to say, is consciousness powering this and that, is to suggest that there might be two or three. Consciousness plus one, consciousness plus two. If we bring everything back together, then we are more in line with what is happening.
Sure. We are definitely saying the same thing. And one, I wanted clarity about that. And the other reason was because I've been working with energy my whole entire life. And it was only 3 years ago. And I used to communicate. I was a trained counsellor, but I'd never listened to what people were saying. I was a trained psychologist. I'd read their energy and respond to the energy. And thank God it worked. But it didn't work in a way. People were understanding their behavior, but they weren't necessarily changing their behaviors. So I went on a spiritual journey. I moved countries, etc., etc. And it was only after 2 months immersing myself into a conscious evolutionary teaching that I realized that everything is made of energy, but energy doesn't run everything, consciousness does. And I know that sounds like I'm speaking of two, but I'm not. I'm speaking of one, because consciousness really is one for all the reasons that you've stated. And the reason why I feel this is so important is because lots of people believe they're victims of energy, especially people that I used to hang out with in the energy world. And I just love the way that you're bringing nature to it, because it gets rid of all the mental, for me it does anyway, it gets rid of all the mental rubbish, and it just singly points to the truth, which I think is really amazing, really gorgeous.
There's one thing that I feel is where humanity really gets stuck, and that is, it doesn't think it's nature. So we've got this human world, and then we call the other one the natural world. Oh, the natural world. It's like, oh, I love going out into nature. We are nature. We are this natural world. We are so egoic. We are so separative in our thinking. We create such separation. The only place where our separation from the whole comes is in thought. We can never be separate from it. We are nature. We are an animal. We are a creature. And I think when humanity really starts to remember that, because it's not something that it's blatantly obvious. We are nature. Yeah, we stick clothes on. We build different kind of houses to ants. But we're creatures. We are natural. And each creature is a thinking organism. Each creature has feelings, which is another thing that kind of really pisses me off when people say, no, don't put human emotions and feelings on an animal because animals don't have feelings. Well, that's nonsense. We are an animal. We're an animal. So why would it not be that thought creates feeling and thought creates experience for every other individual living organism? It wouldn't make sense. And the state of consciousness, of awareness, awareness again implies experience. You cannot have experience without an awareness. And likewise, you cannot have an awareness without an experience. You cannot separate the principles because they're one. And when humanity starts to realize this and realize it's been playing a trick on itself the whole time, and fundamentally by playing this trick on itself, it's been destroying itself. When it wakes up to that, I think we can start working far more in alignment with each other. Jenny and I, we do a lot of work in South Africa in the townships, and it's just amazing to go in there and hear what they have to say about me as an individual, and likewise our preconceptions of them. But when we've gone into I'm from the northwest coast of England, somewhere called the Lake District, a very different place to a township in South Africa, and when we've gone in there and just met in this kind of space of realization that there is no separation between us at all, and we are just united by this love. It was one of the most fantastic moments of my life. And in that, there was this kind of, the guards drop, the ego steps back. And we got to hear the most fantastic accounts of how coming across this understanding for them had totally changed their lives. And it was something that Jen and I both really questioned, because the UK has been awesome at kind of taking our ideas into other countries and imposing them on other people's cultures. So it was like, Jen and I were like, should we really be doing this? Is this really going to be beneficial in the long run? And we just came up with the conclusion, yeah, we haven't come to a place yet where realizing our universal connection, that we are all up against the same illusion, just appearing different, where that hasn't been useful in connecting and breaking down barriers and finding understanding, compassion, love, forgiveness. Any more questions? Amir, am I supposed to be keeping my eye on these questions, or are you doing?
No, if there, you know what, I'm listening to you, so I didn't even know there's questions in here. But I have to say it's crazy. We're almost running out of time. We have 10 minutes, but I wanted to ask you a question. You have such a way of explaining this, and it reminds me of when I first heard the principles for myself. There's this simplicity to this that I have no choice but to feel it, to understand it. And it's not necessarily what you're saying that's doing it. It's just what you've been talking about. I get connected to the same thing you're connected to, and I just experience it with you. And but for those that are listening, there's a lot of people that are, you can say, new to the principles, or maybe have been in it for a long time. I know I'm one of those people that I overread and I get lost back to, okay, what is this again? I wanted to ask you for a final question is, what would you say to people that are wanting to get a deeper understanding, or want to facilitate or help others? What would you point them to? Where should they start looking, or start again for those that are already in it?
Look at life. Look at life. There is nobody has ever taught us anything. Not all the way through school, nobody taught us anything. We have realized stuff all our lives. That's how we've learned. We realize. Learning does not take place outside, because there is no outside. So to start looking outside for learning is a nonsensical place to start. but start looking at ourselves. We are all insightful beings. Insight is the most natural thing. Nobody's taught us to live, you know. Look at us all here, all different ages. Nobody's taught us how to live. We haven't been educated in it. We've all made it. We've all had different ups and downs and different stories, but we're all here. We have it. We are it. And to those that are kind of searching for what they think it is, don't, because it's not what you think it is. That's it. People go searching for, I've spoken to people, it's like I often kind of see people getting confused and I go, oh no, what do you think life looks like when you understand the principles? Well, I'll live in perpetual happiness. Sorry, you're wrong. I'll be amazed if you do. I haven't met anybody yet who does. I certainly don't. I get pissed off, I get upset. I live in it. Don't try and change it. Don't go to war with it. There's something that occurred to me the other week. It's like, if we're all truly searching for peace, it was, when does peace, what is peace? Well, peace is a natural emergent. I was speaking to a lady from Israel, and we were talking about war, and I said, you know, there's one specific time when peace emerges as a natural thing. It's like it's not achieved, it simply emerges. It is a natural consequence of. And peace is a natural consequence of putting down our weapons and stopping fighting. Peace is a natural emergent, it just emerges. And it's likewise, like humanity is like, we fight everything, we just fight. We need to fight this, we need to fight illness, we need to fight mental illness, we need to fight the natural world and overcome it so we can make the natural world work for us. We need to fight this and fight poverty, we need to fight. And then we wonder why there's no peace. You know, the moment like all the weapons are put down, and this includes the weapons of our mind against ourselves, thinking that we should know better, we should be this, I understand these principles, or I think I understand these principles. It's like, the moment those weapons get put down, there's one natural emergent. Everything we're already looking for, everything we're fighting to achieve. Stick with it. It's like, for me, you've got an awesome thing going here, man. It feels a real privilege to have been asked to come onto this. I feel really, really privileged. And it's like this kind of thing. It's like, I need reminding as well. You know, I'm lucky I've got Jen. It's like, Dave, you've been enough. Oh, yes, I am. It's nice to have the reminders. And it's nice because each and every one of us is a teacher in our own right. Every single one of us. There's no better, there's no higher, there's not one person who knows more. It's like, oh, it's all in the world of form. It's all constructions. Going back to the constructions, what is it that does the constructing? And we're all that. We can all help each other. And it does seem to me like as the more people, it's awesome because more and more people around the world are waking up to this. And there's fractions and there's, oh, she's this and he's that, and he's in his ego, it's all that crap. Bollocks and all that shite. But what we ultimately have is a beautiful thing. We have, no matter what the individual, we've got a human being trying to help humanity. And one of the things that really hit me was, if we really want to help the environment, we have to help humanity. It's the only way we can do it.
Dave, I think that's a brilliant place to end. I mean, you literally came on a couple minutes before, which is perfect, because I do want to ask you, I'm sure people here are going to be very curious. How can they get a hold of you? What are you up to? Do you coach? Is there a way they can talk to you or hang out with you, or groups or whatever?
Oh, thanks for asking that, man. That's really kind of you. Yes, there is. Jenny Anderson and myself, we're running a retreat in the Lake District in the northwest of England on the 31st of August to the 3rd of September. That's right, yeah. And they're really nice, those retreats. It's like, Ivan, you've been to one. I just spotted Ivan halfway through. Awesome, man. He's a wise man, is Ivan. Yeah, so we run retreats. We've been doing some work with Jill in South Africa. Jill Baronetti, put your hand up, love. With Jill, another awesome teacher. And so we've got things running in South Africa. We've got something going in Johannesburg, and hopefully something running in Cape Town soon. And we've got this retreat coming up in the English Lake District, so 31st of August to the 3rd of September. And Jen and I both do one-to-ones and stuff like that. Oh, yeah, she's there. And yeah, we have a company called Freedom Thinking. And the website is www.freedomthinking.co.uk. And we're having we don't like the website, so we're having it redone, but you can get hold of us on that anyway. It's got our telephone numbers and emails and my house address if anybody wants to come around for a cup of tea.
That's perfect. And I'll, for those that are on the call, this has been recorded. It will be up, and I will also put a link to your website if they can get in contact with you. I think that'll be absolutely. And again, I am so grateful from the bottom of my heart. I was trusting my inner wisdom, and I said, I don't really know who Dave is. I've only had one Zoom call that I've heard from you, and you just, man, knocked it out of the ballpark. This was incredible for me. I'm getting so many chats right here saying how incredible it was. I love, actually, I have to read this one last one I think is really sweet. Someone said, I'm noticing lots of birds coming to the window besides me. Fab. And I think that's what it's pointing to. We're going to just start seeing more and more of all this as we're back into life. So thank you, Pramila. Thank you for thanking me as well. I have to give Dave all the credit on this one. And I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put you on the spot. Would you be willing to do another one of these eventually in our group? Happy to have you and Jen.
If this is the last time we speak of me, I'll be really sad.
Okay, fair enough. I'll take that. I'll take that up for you as well. And thank you so much. And again, thank you for everybody that's been on here. This experience, this feeling wouldn't be the same without all you guys here. So I can't thank you guys enough. And I can't wait to see all you guys in the group, and hopefully have more of these Zoom calls for you guys. And I love you all. And Dave, love you so much for coming on here.
Love you too, man. Thanks so much.
And have a wonderful start of the week, you guys. This is a beautiful way to start it.
We will.
Take care.
Thank
Take
you.
care, everyone. Thank you.
Bye, Dave. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Bye, Jenny.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Wonderful.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Take
Thanks,
care,
everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Amir.